I think it's a really great time for us to sit back and reflect on how we look after ourselves. And also because us as a community, we're not coming together as often as we can, that if we can engage in some of these live streams to talk about some things that are helpful to us, but also interesting to us, particularly as a pole community, we might benefit from it long term. So pole dancers tend to have something in common. We always want to be better than we were the session before. We want to get better at pole artistry, right? And pole mastery. And that is a sign that we have a certain commitment to personal growth. That's something that we're trying. It means that we are all interested in growing ourselves as people because we want to get better at something. How we look after ourselves doesn't just impact getting better at pole, it impacts getting better as people and how we respond to things in everyday life. I wasn't always very good at self-care. I would say yes to everything. I was always massively over-committed, and I would find myself quite stressed and as a result quite snappy. I wasn't good at being in a process of checking in with myself, so I was always on high alert, looking for the next threat or the next disaster and trying to plan around it and just being ready to react. And living your life reactively is actually not very beneficial to you. It means that your stress levels are always quite high and your anxiety levels are always quite high. My anxiety levels until I was about 25 were always very high. I remember some of my earliest childhood memories are nap time at childcare. I would never sleep. I was too anxious to sleep. I would be awake in the middle of the night with my mum because I just didn't want to sleep ever. So I was an anxious kid. And I've had lots and lots of therapy. So I started going to therapy when I had an eating disorder when I was around 16. I started receiving therapy for that. And it was a journey of about 6 years to find a therapist that I actually liked and that actually worked for me. But we did a lot of therapy together and I learned a lot about self-care. So I'm always in two minds about telling people things. I was the victim of child abuse. I grew up in a very violent household. And then my first sexual encounter was sexual assault. I was sexually assaulted. And after that, I developed an eating disorder. And it was the one thing in my life I could control. And I got down to 39 kilos at one point, but I maintained 45 kilos and below for a really long time. I maintain a level of being almost fully recovered now. I have one caveat, and that's that I can't weigh myself and I can't be weighed and I can't associate myself with a number. I need to keep my self-worth and my personal value really separate and distinct from something like the number of kilos that make up me as a person. I need to really be focused on seeing myself as a human being that loves people, that is loved by people, that has the things that I like and enjoy and nothing else. And I look after myself for the joy that it gives me and the way it makes me more efficient in my life rather than for some aesthetic and beneficial pleasing to the eye kind of superficial reason. And that's a very difficult point to get to. But when you progress into a point where you're really resilient and you practice self-care and resilience, then the rest kind of looks after itself. So one of the main tools you can develop for practicing good self-care is checking in. So once or twice a day, it doesn't have to be like full-on yogic meditation, but just going, okay, how do I feel? Check in where your breath is going. Often you're in this head space, this space of reactive, responsive stressed, quite fight or flight, if you're breathing just in the top part of your chest, really quick way to fix that. If you check in and you go, oh, I feel kind of edgy, I don't know really what's going on, stop. Go, well, I'm going to take some deep breaths right out into my belly, into the sides of the ribs and my back until that edgy feeling goes away. And I'll tell you what, it takes 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And there is a lot of scientific research around DNA and genetic expression, and it all says this one thing about breath, how we use our breath. If you can slow your breathing for a period of 10 minutes, and then your out breath is just 2 seconds longer than your in breath, and you do that for 10 minutes, you completely drop your cortisol levels like super dramatically, and you feel really refreshed and recharged and clear for the rest of the day. And we don't have 10 minutes every day to do that, but even if you do it for 1 minute, you'll still get a big drop, right? You don't have to make big commitments to huge chunks of time to look after yourself. Make it small, make it consistent, and it'll work, and you just have to make it count. So yeah, breath work is a great place to start with self-care, just to bring us down into a point where we can choose who we want to show up as from moment to moment. What we don't want is to be reacting to situations, like everything happens to us and we feel like we're emotionally thrown overboard by whatever might happen to us in a given day, and that we feel all this turmoil inside of us, and that might make us act in a certain way to the people around us. I haven't mastered this by any extent, but if I can take that time to check in and breathe and look after myself, I can more consciously choose how I'm going to show up to the people around me and how I'm going to react to that situation with a little bit of thought and reflection rather than being on autopilot. You know, how many times have you been in a car with someone who's been super aggro and road raging, and you've just wished they'd shut the fuck up? You're like, you are putting me on edge because you're super edgy and I don't need your aggro. You know, you're like, that just tells you that they are not evolved to look after themselves and check in because they're stressed and they're reacting all the time. And that's their journey and that's up to them. That's not on you. We just have to sit back and go, choose not to be dragged in to their crap, right? That's another thing for us. But so breathing and taking time to check in and being honest about how you feel and owning all this stuff and knowing that it belongs to you, and nothing about how you feel is ever anyone else's fault. And if someone is behaving in a way that makes you feel a certain way, then you have to look back and see why. And if there's something in their behavior that you'd like to change, then ask them to change the behavior. But you can't expect them to do that because that's on them. All you can do is either learn to accept the behavior or move away from that person. And if they love you and they respect you and you can come to them calmly because you've chosen how you want to show up and ask them to change that behavior, then surely they'll respond kindly, right? And if they don't, then you need to look at whether or not they're really someone you want to have around. So self-care in our communication, being kind, being compassionate, it all starts with you and owning that stuff for yourself, and then taking that into your relationships with other people. So getting ourselves to a point that we can look after ourselves isn't just about breathing and checking in. It's also about how we treat our bodies, because the way that we treat our body, it goes deeper. It's the way that we treat ourselves. And there's a real problem in modern society about self-care being treat yourself and because I'm worth it, and I get to eat Macca's once or twice a week because I'm looking after myself because that's what I want to do. And that's actually not how it works. Okay. So food is fuel and nourishment and nutrition, but we have to be really careful that we're connecting with the food that we eat. Also, I know when I'm really stressed, I'm afraid to be hungry. So I will eat a little bit more and get a little bit more obsessive about my food because I'm stressed. So we want to take our emotions and food and separate them. And that just comes down to discipline and listening to your cravings and your drive. And if you're like, I'm just going to have takeaway, then if that happens more than once or twice a week, what's happening with your meal prep and what's happening with your food planning? Because we have so many fast food choices and options around us, but honestly, the more we just put into our body thoughtlessly, the less we connect with our food and the less we are looking after ourselves, right? That's not conscious choice. We need to sit down and think about, right, what am I going to do when I buy my groceries? What do I want to eat this week? Tom and I used to not do this, but I was very good at having a full fruit and veg crisper. And we did cook at home at least 5 nights a week, but we were going through the same 5 things on the same day of the week all the time. So what's been really great about being an ISO is being able to write meal plans, and then one night a week, one of us takes turns at cooking something new that we haven't made before. So yeah, you can have that chocolate from time to time. And, if stuff actually brings you pleasure and brings you joy, great. But looking after yourself is also about practicing moderation, right? About putting a limit and a boundary on that you actually observe and adhere to, because if you pass that boundary, you're going to feel like shit. And when you feel like shit, you're going to kick yourself. And when you kick yourself, you're going to continue to spiral into a pattern of behavior. It's not just you, babe. If you think that happens to you and you're alone, it's all of us. And women are way better at getting stuck in this downward spiral of loathing and treating ourselves badly because we've done one thing wrong. So that's also, moderate, but if you mess it up, be prepared to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and go, shit happens. It's not one day. This is kind of like LaTonya's pole session that sucked, where she's like, oh man, I used to be so much better than this. Tomorrow, next time, it's fine. But you can't say that all the time. So how do you keep yourself accountable? How do we find ways to actually enforce and practice that moderation around food, apart from planning? Have people that you can talk to. Have friends, have community. I know Alex and Sylvia are quite clever with this, in that they train together. We do personal training. I'm not talking to them about food. People get very private and very defensive about food. And if you feel defensive about food and like you don't want to talk about what you're eating and what you're doing, then sit down and figure out how you want to do it in a way that makes you feel better. And it's not about eating rabbit food or salad leaves. That's not sustainable. It's just about knowing what you're going to make for the week and having an idea about what you can have lunch. Start with only looking at 3 days. The next 3 days, I'm going to eat this for breakfast, I'm going to eat this for dinner, I'm going to eat this for tea, and I'm going to have this stuff available for snacks. I've always got carrot and hummus available for snacks. That's my favorite, or little squeezy coconut yogurts. You'll find stuff that you like that isn't packed full of processed sugars and refined crap. You'll find it. Just keep experimenting until you do. And it takes time for us to adapt to things that we like to eat. And if you want to talk about this separately because you're not finding stuff that works for you, hit me up. Okay, so self-care, part of it is breathing and checking in with where you're at emotionally. Part of it is eating in a way that makes you feel both good about yourself, but makes you operate better because your body's being given good fuel. And then there's also movement. Movement is a big part of self-care, but when we move our bodies and we want to get stronger and fitter and more flexible, please don't exercise to get thinner. Yes, you can exercise to lose fat. Totally valid. Yes, you can exercise to build muscle. Totally valid. But that stuff really comes from here, what you put into here. Exercise is a way for you to enjoy your body and for your body to get really good at doing things that we want a body to do. Okay, so experiencing success in our physical form, right? That is transformational. We spend every single day of our life in this physical body, right? So when we get that new pole trick and we feel amazing, when we can lift a heavier weight at the gym, like I really still find that a buzz as well. Gosh, I've gone up another 5 kilos in 3 months. Things like that. Enjoy your body for successful experiences, because a healthy, strong, fit, flexible body will make you feel good and stop you aging over the long term. Cool. So, and don't put I have a real problem with these 16-week and 12-week challenges and stuff. Yes, it's a great kickstart for a long-term journey, but you don't stop at the end of the 12 or 16 weeks. It's a great way to ramp it up and go, I want to see how my body can change if I really dedicate and commit myself to it. That's totally fine. But thinking that you just need to spend 12 or 16 weeks and then you'll have your dream body and that's where it ends, that's very faulty thinking. That's us wanting a quick fix. And that's not really how anything works. Nothing is a quick fix. Everything is about building a lifestyle that makes us feel good about ourselves today, tomorrow, the next day, and every day after that. So moving our body regularly, staying in the dark all day is not good for us. Staying inside all day is not good for us. Sitting all day is not good for us. Aim for at least 10,000 steps a day. So, if you eat chips and Maccas, don't think that you have to go and run on a treadmill for 45 minutes just because you feel like you need to. That's exercising for punishment. That's not exercising for longevity. Don't go down that path. Look after yourself. Move to feel well, eat to feel well, breathe to feel well. Running, yoga, and pole literally saved my life. So I've been posting up these photos of when I was 20, Thursday and Friday of last week, and people have been looking at those photos and going, oh, you were so cool as a goth and stuff. I was freaking miserable. I was on shit tons of drugs. I had to be like the thinnest girl in the room, or I was massively dissatisfied. I was in competition with everyone. And I just look back at myself and I feel a little bit sad. Firstly, I just wish I'd been able to be happy in my own skin. And when I discovered running, I started going, whoa, endorphins. This is better than any chemical high. And then when I discovered yoga, I was like, wow, I paid a lot more money for therapy that made me feel pretty much the same way. And then when I discovered pole, I felt success in my body that I never dreamed of, and I connected with people who shared the same drives and motivators as me. I don't think I had real friends with real bonds on the same level until I found pole. So for me, being active in my pole community is a really big part of my own self-care, because it means I'm connected to people that I identify with. And that's really important with our happiness, right? With feeling self-fulfilled. Okay, cool. So we've got 2 questions coming. How do I kick the fact that I'm unmotivated lately without going to the studio? You got to dig deep, because look, one day we'll be able to go back to the studio, and how are we going to feel if we don't do any form of movement now and we show up and we're not able to do the things that we were able to do before? Now, it's really likely that we'll, experience some forms of setback, but at least if we've been progressing in other areas, it's going to help us when we show up again, back in that familiar space. So how do we find motivation when we can't do the things that we want to do? We have to look at the challenge and get excited about the challenge to do something different and to try something different and to experience new things. And we have to embrace these new experiences because they're temporary, right? You just got to think, well, for this time, I'm going to just do as much as I can of whatever I can and learn what I can about myself when I can't necessarily do what I want to do. Because that's what we're doing here in ISO, right? We are learning who we are as people when we are not allowed to do what you want. You've never experienced this before. And that's hard. And that's a killer, right? So we'll come back to that. So you've just got to push yourself to keep trying and doing stuff and connect with community. And it's totally valid to feel unmotivated and resistant to not being able to do things the way you want to do them. But you've also got to embrace the opportunity to do something new. and to do what you can. And that's a positive attitude that you need to furnish within yourself, to build within yourself. All right, coming to the next question. I've seen a dip in my regulation and my drive in wanting to do exercise, for sure. Accountability, like, firstly, valid, real. You need people to hold you accountable to motivate yourself and go, well, I might not want to do it today, but how will I feel tomorrow if I don't show up and do what I need to do? So wanting to do something and needing to do something, often very different. I tell you what, I woke up with a hangover this morning because we had trivia last night. I didn't necessarily want to do boot camp, but I know that I need to do boot camp. I need to show up. I need to put my body through its paces so that I continue to feel good. And the more benefit you get from training, the more you want to train. And you know that if you don't show up to training, that's when you start to feel sluggish. The less you do, the crappier you feel. All right, just remember that one. When doing yoga and fit, not difficult to not have the mind self. Yeah, okay, cool. Learning to enjoy movement without having to have a physical payoff. Yeah. It's tough, and you just have to, that's all you have to do. Just like every time you catch yourself thinking about needing a physical payoff, take a deep breath, let it go. No, I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment, actually. Am I enjoying what I'm doing at the moment? And if you honestly answer, no, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing at the moment, stop. Find something that you will enjoy doing in that moment. I've never started a workout and hated it and wanted to stop. You get into a groove, and generally you want to do the workout. So, and when I catch myself thinking about something else, I go, well, so this one's quite sticky and complex. When we need a physical payoff, it comes from a place of not believing that as we are in this moment, we are enough. And that takes a lot of work to come to terms with. As I am in this moment, I am enough. This moment, what I am doing for what it is enough. And it takes looking yourself in the mirror regularly and saying it until you freaking well believe it. And you are enough. You're enough. Just being born took a series of miracles. I wrote this on a message to Clarissa the other day, actually, is a huge series of miracles that brings you to this earth, right? And if you're on a journey that you're looking after yourself and you want to be better than you were yesterday and you're trying to like enjoy your life, it's enough. There's no point being miserable. That you don't need a six-pack. It doesn't make you a better person, and it certainly doesn't make anyone like you more or love you more, and it doesn't make you love anyone else more, and it doesn't make you love yourself more, because you are not the number of abs that are visible to anyone else. Cool. It doesn't matter. You don't die caring about the six-pack that you went to the grave with, right? You die caring about the people you love and the people that loved you. And I know that's kind of morose, but it's really important that we live for things that make us happy and experiences that make us happy. So find joy in doing what you're doing in that moment. Crowded and living at home with family, no space or time for yourself. Yeah, go for a walk. Make it like really important for you to find that 30 minutes a day to get outside and go for a walk. You'll get vitamin D, you'll get sunshine, and you'll get away from everyone else. Create your own space, create your own time. That's the best advice I have for that. Eating for pleasure instead of nourishment is very challenging. How to change the relationship with food to feel healthier? Practice meal planning. Just don't forget about calorie counting. Get the shit food out of the house, buy good food and eat it. That's the, and just, and have a treat every now and then. Say 80-20 is great. Even 70-30 while you're learning, right? 70-30 is fine. Have some treats around and enjoy them. When you're going to have a treat, look forward to it. That's moderation, right? Looking forward to enjoying that treat. It's really difficult, but it makes it taste so much better when you get there. And also you do start to enjoy the healthy foods that you're eating. After about 3 weeks of meal planning and buying the things that you know are good for you, and buy the ones that you're going to actually enjoy eating as well, it gets easier. It takes about 3 weeks to struggle, but at the end of that 3 weeks, you start committing and you notice that, okay, I can have these things and I can have what I want, but it doesn't have to be all the time. And strength comes back. Yeah, really, it is just about showing up. Feeling strong takes practice. Getting flexible again takes practice. And you've just got to make that agreement with yourself that you are going to show up, that you're going to do it, and you're going to spend the time, and you're not going to push so hard that you can't show up again tomorrow. You know, consistency and restraint is better than smashing it and being broken. Yeah, this is a great, I think Sarah May's response to Joanna sums that up beautifully. Right, that's nearly half an hour of our Saturday gone. It's a beautiful sunny Saturday. Brooke, go for your walk. Wear a hat, use some sun protection. Have a beautiful weekend, guys.